Hello and welcome to Module 7. In Module 6, you focused on different comprehension strategies that students can partake in, as well as different strategies that teachers can use when teaching comprehension activities or lessons. Here in Module 7, we're now going to take that information and apply it to the content areas. So you may think, well, certainly reading and writing happens in your English class or in your language arts section of the day, but reading and writing really occurs in every content area, whether we've realized it or not. And interestingly, as your text notes, that most of the reading that our students and people in general partake in is within a specific content area. So as you move into high school and college and life, most of your reading experiences are including discipline-specific material. And so it's really important that we are working with our students so that they understand how to comprehend these different texts, so they understand the different strategies that they will use as readers of content-specific texts, as well as how best to write in those contents, in those content areas. So, in Common Core, when the new standards came out with Common Core, these standards require more reading and writing in the content areas than previously were required. So teachers are really working hard to make sure that the strategies that they're using within the classroom are applicable not only to the general literacy areas or the general reading, but also to the content-specific reading. And so you may have heard some terms such as content area reading or content area literacy. You may have also heard of disciplinary literacy. And over the past 10-15 years or so, there has been a shift from content area reading toward disciplinary reading. And you can link that to literacy as a whole to bring in the reading and the speaking and communicating. But really, all this shift is, when you think about content area reading strategies, those are the general reading strategies that you may have learned in your English class that you then need to apply to all the different content areas. So perhaps you learned how to organize your information in a process or in a flow chart. In your English class, you learned how to create that timeline or that flow chart. Well, when you're in a science class, certainly as you're completing a science experiment, there is a specific set of steps that you must follow. And so you could organize your information in a science class in specific steps. Now, with content area reading, in general, the student was responsible for transferring that knowledge of how to create a flow chart to the science classroom, and they may not have received specific instruction in the science classroom of how to apply that flow chart to that specific science experiment. Now, recently with disciplinary literacy, the focus is more on teaching these literacy skills, these reading and writing skills within the disciplines. So now your science teacher would incorporate some of those reading and writing strategies in the daily instruction so that students are seeing how scientists or people within that field would use these specific skills. And so everything becomes specific to the discipline. So sure, some of these skills may be the same, but you're looking at it from the perspective of a scientist, for example. So it is certainly very important for students to be able to understand the structure of the text and the organization of the text so that they can then work to incorporate the specific strategies that would apply to that type of text. And you'll learn about that in this module, specifically with the graphic organizers and how to organize that information and how to take notes of that on that information. Something else specific with our content focused reading material would be the vocabulary, the content itself, which interestingly students will have to work harder to build their background knowledge in order to be prepared for these reading materials. And then really they need to look at the purpose of why they are reading this text. Is it to learn more information? Is it to analyze the material so that they can draw conclusions and so forth? So as you go through this chapter, really look at some of these features of these content-specific texts and what you think your students would need to know going into into reading that material. Now, we've talked earlier in this semester about your before reading skills, your during reading skills, and your after reading skills. And certainly we've touched on each of those so far, and we'll continue to throughout the rest of this semester. But this chapter does a real nice job organizing the information into before reading, during reading, and after reading strategies. So you'll see that as you go through the different materials. Some of the before reading strategies that you'll touch on are anticipation guides. You've been seeing those in every chapter, and I've had that in the list of activities for you to do. We'll talk about anticipation guides, we'll talk about KWL charts, graphic organizers, as I mentioned before. We'll talk about ways to respond to the reading and so forth. Also in this chapter, as well as your different activities, we'll also have a few that focus specifically on English language learners and how we can better support them through content area reading materials. So we've learned already that we have to support our students, we have to differentiate for our students in order to help them all to be successful in the classroom. And certainly that is raised a notch when we get into the content-specific text, because that vocabulary can be so much more complex and the structure of the text can be so much more complex. So keep an eye out for that as well. You'll have a couple really good videos that you'll be watching where you can see some of that in action. And then finally, this chapter in the activities focus on study skills that all students can use to help understand the material, help to organize it, help to review, and so forth. So you'll learn about SQ3R and mnemonic devices and so forth. So I hope you enjoy this module. It's really neat because everything that you've been doing so far, it's really building up, and now you're starting to see it applied to the different content areas. So let's go ahead and look in Blackboard, and I will review what we are working on here. Okay, here is our module. Again, this is looking familiar. You only have one chapter, chapter 9 for this module, which is very exciting. I know the last two modules you had 2, so this will give you a nice little break there. You do have 1 week to complete this, so everything will be due by 11:59 on Sunday, July 9th. Many of you are working ahead with your coursework. So you can plan around different vacations over the summer and so forth. So definitely that is a good strategy to work ahead in these modules. So certainly everything can be done or turned in long before July 9th, but that is your ultimate due date there. For your project, let me go ahead and pull that up first, actually. Your first project activity will be vocabulary, just as normal. Here we go. And you've got your handful of terms, which should be pretty straightforward. You'll give your definition and your description in your own words. Make sure to do that. Yes, you've got your definitions straight from the text, but what I'd like you to do is really just, as if we ran into each other in the elevator, give me a quick definition and description for each of these terms. Put these in your own words so you can really show that you're understanding this content. And then over in the right column, I would like you to give me a specific example of when or how you would use this in a content classroom. So you will need to identify the content area that you are looking at, and then give an example of how you would use it within that content area. You can use a different content area for different terms, or you can use one content area for all terms. That is up to you. Just make sure you identify it so that I can see it. Okay. As you get into activity 2, for the next couple activities, you're going to go to this great website, and let me go ahead and pull that up here. Okay, I'm going to go to this website called Everyday Mysteries, and this, if you haven't seen this before, this is out of the Library of Congress, and you do have a lot of different science topics covered in here, and so what I would like you to do is first you're going to look at this website and choose one of these topics. And then underneath each topic, let's say we choose botany, underneath each topic there are a handful of questions. So under botany we have, is a coconut a fruit, nut, or seed? And so you're going to choose one of these questions to focus on for this activity. And then when you go into that that topic, or that specific question, you'll get some more information about that topic with different resources. So for activity 2, you're going to complete a KWL chart using the question that you've chosen. So obviously you want to do your K and your W before you click on that question and see the content. Then you'll do your L and what you learned and what you still want to learn in your 4th column after you've read through some of that information. Certainly this is not going to be a challenging activity for you, but I want to see how you pull out different information into your KWL chart and really think about it from the student's perspective and how the student might use this resource to fill out this KWL chart. The chapter does provide some good examples and an explanation of a KWL chart, and certainly many of you probably have material there or experience there. So read through your directions carefully in activity 2 so you can see what you need to pull into that response. Then you're going to take that same, okay, so I've got as a coconut, a fruit, nut, or seed. Now since I've chosen this one, y'all can't choose that one. But so what you're going to do now, you've got all this good information in here about coconuts. I want you for activity 3 to create a graphic organizer that pulls out the key concepts or main points about that topic. So again, you're going to then need to decide which type of graphic organizer you're going to use depending on how this information is organized. So this page right here that I have up is certainly an example of a content-specific text that you're reading, and so you're going to need to decide, is it descriptive, is it classification, is it process or sequence, is it cause and effect, and so forth. And then you'll want to choose the graphic organizer that is appropriate for that structure of the text. Okay, so that's activity 3. Again, read through your directions carefully so you can make sure you include all the information, both your graphic organizer and your response. Now in both activity 2 and 3, you may decide to create your KWL chart or your graphic organizer in a separate document, and that is fine. Just attach it as a second attachment on your submission and label it as KWL activity project 7 or project 7 KWL or something along those lines so that I know specifically what I'm looking for as I'm going through and grading. Okay. Then when you get into activity 4, okay, you're going to go to another website that is focused on teaching English language learners. And there is some really good information in here that brings the concept of sheltered instruction to a clearer view. Sometimes that can be challenging for students and teachers to really get a good handle on. But what you'll do, the project goes right through with your directions. You're going to first watch this video here, where the challenge, it's called the challenge video. You're going to watch this video, only 4 minutes, and complete the activities that it instructs you to do throughout the video. Okay, and then you're going to come here to the Perspectives and Resources tab over here on the left, and all of this is written out in your project. But you're going to go here, and you've got lots of really great pages of information that I strongly encourage you to go through and read and compare this information with what you've been reading in the text. But specifically for this activity, you're going to go to page 4 for sheltered instruction. And then here you'll read through the different information on sheltered instruction, and as you get down to the bottom, you've got a really nice chart that gives you some strategies to use when you're using sheltered instruction. But then there are 2 short videos down at the bottom, so if I can get them both in there, of this teacher. In one video she is not using sheltered instruction, and in one video she is. And so you can really see the difference from a student's perspective of when she is using sheltered instruction and not. And I'm hoping that this will give you a good handle on what sheltered instruction is and what it will look like in the classroom. Okay, so you'll write a response to this content, making connections between the text, the website, and these videos. And then you're going to connect that to how you can support ELLs in your classroom. And finally, you're going to then take all this information and identify 5 strategies that you could use to support ELLs when you're thinking about teaching this same topic that you are working with in activities 2 and 3. Okay, so you've already worked through some different lessons and strategies and practices with this content in your activities 2 and 3. But now here in this activity, I want you to think about how you can support ELLs in your classroom through those activities. So I want you to come up with 5 strategies that you can apply to this unit, and then you'll list them there. So certainly your book, this website, and the videos will all be a great resource for you as you're going through those. Okay, and then finally your last video is on using sentence frames to jumpstart writing. Okay, and this is from the Teaching Channel, which is a great resource for different teaching ideas and practices and strategies, and you can see them in action in these videos. So if you haven't been to this channel before, I strongly encourage you to check it out. But here I'd like you to watch this video on using sentence frames to jumpstart writing, and think about how you could apply that to your content area classroom or content specific text. Okay. And I've got some specific prompts for you to answer in your project. Okay, so I'm hoping that this will be a fun module. Well, of course, I'm hoping all modules have been fun, but this one specifically because you're using some of these same activities in the same content specific material through your different activities. As always, if you have questions about any of those, just go ahead and reach out on the help forum to your classmates or shoot me an email. The last piece that I want to talk about in here is your discussion board. This activity is focused on your anticipation guides. Okay, let me get down here. And so your anticipation guides that you've been looking at with each of your chapters this semester, hopefully you've been using those all along as you've had in your list of activities to do. But what I'd like you to do here is to create an anticipation guide for a content-specific text. You may choose which text that you are using, and then you'll create your anticipation guide. 4 to 5 debatable statements is plenty. You don't need to do more than that. You're welcome to, but you only need to do 4 or 5 to really get your students thinking about the content before they start reading, and then coming back to revisit it during reading and after reading. So you've got all your directions there. It is another blind discussion board forum, so you'll post yours first. You'll insert a picture of the book, give this the standard learning objective, and so forth. You know that you should be used to that by now. And then you'll provide your anticipation guide, and then a quick justification of the book and the anticipation guide and how they link together. So I hope you have some fun with that in developing those anticipation guides. And then, as always, you'll post 2 responses to your classmates, or responses to 2 classmates, providing feedback on that anticipation guide, as well as giving them 1 additional debatable statement that they could add to that anticipation guide. So that will be nice, because then you can build on your anticipation guide for that particular text. I encourage you, if you are working in a classroom setting, to choose a book that you use already in the class so that you can build this anticipation guide and then use it in the upcoming school year. Okay, last thing, you'll see that everything, as I get back into Module 7, everything else should look the same. You've got your quiz. Yay, only 1 quiz this week because you just have 1 chapter, so I'm sure you're thrilled about that. You've got your discussion board and your project. So everything is due by Sunday, July 9th. Again, turn them in early if you can. And if you have any questions along the way, certainly just let me know. Reach out, and and I'm hoping you'll enjoy this module. All right, have a great day.